Right. Hello, Broderick Wallace here, and I am joined once again by Mr.
Samuel Conor.
Samuel Conor. And this is the ayahuasca video. So because we respect Her Majesty's government and the law, and of course we're such law-abiding citizens that would not dream of getting anywhere close to the edge or upsetting anyone or breaking the law, perish the thought. If we were hypothetically to make a video about what would happen if Mr. Samuel Conor here had cooked up some Class A substances in his kitchen and then brought them round to my old house, let's just look at this like a fantasy of what would happen if that had happened, not just once but many times. And then we began to get a little bit in the fantasy. We got a little bit brave and decided that we would actually do the vine at the stones. So we're going to imagine these 5 sessions. And what do you think, Mr. Conor?
Sounds like a good plan, and I completely agree with the strategy in terms of how we're approaching the what if part of the video. But yeah, we will assume that it happened.
And anyway, so we know that anyone that's going to watch this video, who's calling me? Bloody hell, mate. Not now. Sending you blessings, brother, but don't call me now. Right. So what's this? As you can see, this is Rough Notes as a Memory Aid. Began 2018, and I think it doesn't go past 2018, does it? If we look at oh no, it does. It does. It goes right up into November 2019. So this stretches from January 2018 to November 2019. Ayahuasca Journal, and lovely little glyph here that I'm quite pleased with how that came out. Nice green book. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. Ayahuasca Journal. So this is the proof here. I do have this propensity towards documenting important and artistic / spiritual / musical, whatever, anything creative, anything that tickles my fancy. I've been good at keeping records over the years, so that way we don't have to rely on just memory. With all the best will in the world, things can change slightly over time, but the events of this story, if it happened, were that impactful that I don't think it would be possible to get too much wrong or to forget them at all. So now we haven't planned this. We've just come out here to the jungle. See the jungle here? Pretty cool, huh? Nice sunny day as well. And so we haven't talked about this for a long time. I've literally just got the journal, so I'm going to be reading notes, and we're going to try and piece this together as economically as possible, trying to cover all of the bases, and however long it takes is however long it takes. If this video is 1 hour, cool. If it's 2, great. If it's 3, no problem. And if there are any images, or if I want to include the pages of this notebook, that will all come in a part 2, providing that this camera doesn't start splitting this up into parts anyway, because I used to have a camera that would do that. So annoying. Like as soon as it gets to half an hour, it stores that as one video. But anyway, forgetting all that technological annoyance, hopefully this will be no longer than 2 parts, and as long as it takes, we will expect you to have patience. We are assuming that we're broadcasting to the kind of people that would give this some time and consideration. So, anything that you want to add before we...
No, let's crack on.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, notes, the 7th of January, so in our story, Mr. Samuel Conor has already acquired the, so if we don't want to spend too long on this because this is covered in other people's videos, but basically if you just explain what what in this story, what you got hold of, and then...
So in this story, we don't need to go into the scientific interactions, how the chemicals work, how, that's something that you can look up online. So basically, it was a technique where you take the ayahuasca itself, which is the vine which inhibits. So that's the chemical basically that inhibits. Oh, let's start that again.
Take a swig of Coke.
Right, because I just said I wasn't going to talk about chemistry, and then I started talking about chemistry. So basically, we're just taking two plants and mixing them together, but it has to be brewed over a very long amount of time. So I think in this case, it took me 15 hours, about 15 hours. I had to start it very early in the morning, and I didn't finish it till late the next night. Because you have to keep filtering it and remixing it anyway. So it takes a long time, and really you shouldn't leave the brew unattended at any point. And while you're doing this is a holy act, and you are creating a doorway into the spirit world. So it has to be done with a lot of reverence, a very pure heart, and a lot of intention. So, and judging by the results, that seemed to have been achieved. So it took a couple of days, and then once the liquid's all settled down, it's all ready to be rebrewed on the night, mixed, and then consumed.
So this takes us to, we're at my old house, the terraced house where I used to live, which is captured on older videos, and which is a house that has its own atmosphere and a lot of special stories anyway, so that kind of plays into the whole drama here. And there's something I want to pick up on what you said about this kind of holy preparation.
Yeah.
Because there is this notion that like you should fast, and a little bit like a magical ritual, perhaps you should allow your elements to balance over a few days quite intensely as you give up certain pleasures and all this kind of thing. And I just want to say that none of that happened. That's the clean way of putting it. I'm just saying, in this story I might have been up a little bit late the night before, and these rules have no bearing on the story whatsoever. So let's just destroy that myth straight away. Mm-hmm. And there's another myth as well, like people say, oh, you need a shaman to do this. Rubbish. Excuse me. What you need is a brain in your head and some kind of soul that is in any way, shape or form developed. And once the technical, the cooking is taken care of by our cook here, if you take it with a serious mindset, we took it as explorers. So our intentions were pure and good, and but there's something else that we need to say as well, is that we took it semi-scientifically, like let's just see what happens when we take this. We had no expectations whatsoever. Now of course we've listened to Terence McKenna and all kinds of ayahuasca stories, we know the whole folklore and everything like that, so this is one of the reasons we were so surprised that it actually played out in line with the folklore so strongly, because we were just two guys in a terraced house in a rundown port town. In fact, we had pillows, didn't we? We were in this room upstairs, and we just got some pillows and popped them against the wall. So we were both sort of sat against the wall, and Mr Conor here brought in the like a tray with all these cups, and this I want to say as well, like Mr Conor here might disagree, but like this idea that it tastes awful, I was okay.
Yeah, I think Broderick has a very strong constitution when it comes to anything you put in your mouth, and I'm the opposite, so I knew that the greatest challenge was actually going to be keeping this stuff down, you know. So I would say that as much as I'd like to think that it's not the most horrible thing I've ever consumed, it is right up there. And it was very hard to keep down, and I think that Broderick's experience of it aside, I think most people have this experience of it being extremely difficult to consume, and there's a reason for that, and that's something that Terence McKenna says in a lot of his videos, that basically it's to keep out people that ain't going to follow up, you know. So usually if you've been sick after taking the first mouthful of this stuff, like, it's going to get harder and harder for you to consume this and to follow it through. So the idea is that you need to fight through the unpleasantness to get to what's beyond.
It has that element of trial about it that you would expect from any, like, you want the goods, you've got to go through the trial. But for me, I was fine. I took a few, I was like, this just tastes like really, really, really strong coffee to me. I just glugged it all down. It's like, cool, fine.
Yeah.
So
I would before we move on to the next bit, I would like to also mention something on the subject of purification. And I can corroborate this, that, you know, over the course of the weeks, I did attempt to abstain somewhat from the things that I was told were going to make this experience diluted or going to convolute it, but I also found that purification can be a bit subjective, and as two lay people that have never done this before, if you go into a situation, you have to sort of say to yourself, well, who am I trying to fool, you know, by saying I haven't had sex in a week, or I haven't consumed any chocolate in 48 hours, you know. I've got a friend that went to an ayahuasca retreat, and they did several ceremonies over a week, and before he went, he was already planning on what alcohol he was going to have after he'd have done it all. So if you've got that mindset but you haven't drunk in 2 weeks, there's no point. You might as well have a drink the night before because you've already depurified yourself by your intentions after the ceremony, you know. So just
bad attitude, isn't it?
You know, without sort of just cut the crap and get on with it, and humble yourself and go in there with a sense of not being that pure, because at the end of the day you're looking for purification through this ritual. So it's kind of, you know, it's a bit either way for me. Anyway, that's all I got to say on that one. But
and this does bring to, when you're talking about purity, this brings up for me, we are covering events that began early 2018 and that bled into late 2019, so I'm going to have to talk about things that don't represent me now, the way I feel and think about life after 2 hard years of daily Hermetic meditation and the purification process, which has been up and down and difficult, and don't get me wrong, and there's, you know, the life is the path, right? There's always work to do, but I'm going to be talking about things and mentioning things that are not really in my ken anymore, or at least are extremely lessened, like certain relationship traumas and the time that I pretended to be Christian in order to chat up a young woman, and
we've all done it.
All these kinds of, so, you know, falsehood there, and you know, there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of that point where you're crossing into your 40s, and your 30s still contain a lot of your 20s, if you know what I mean. So it's all different stages and etc. So we're going to have to talk about things and but I have said this a few times, and this is the beauty of the Broderick Wallace channel, that there is an evolution from its beginnings, and you should be able to see the reality of the practices that are discussed, exemplified in the character of whatever the latest video is. Hopefully. Right, so notes, the 7th of January 2018, and I'm just going to read off just the first thing that it says here, which is risky. William will remember all details. So this is something this brings us straight into Mother Ayahuasca. I mean, talk about bang, straight in there. This is a quote from Mother Ayahuasca, but I guess we kind of need to pull back a little bit, don't we? Because that's quite impactful. I know, because I had a very quick flick through this book, that I have an order of events here which I wrote down, because the first session was the biggie, because this is it's like losing your virginity or whatever, or the first time you ever saw a metal band play live or whatever. This is like, this changes your life. This is monumental. Yeah. Or when you have children, the most beautiful thing. So it's called the Oracular Miracula. For some reason that I just my artistic side coming up there again. So first of all, we have one humor gate. So I'm going to run through these really quick actually, and then we can go back and it will start to tie in, because this is very difficult. So the humor gate is, as it was coming on, we started laughing. Number 2, we have patterns, so we start having those early visions. Number 3, I happened to channel Terence McKenna. Number 4, she arrives, Mother Ayahuasca. Number 5, camera off. Remember that?
Yep.
Whoa. 6, personal stuff. It gets deep. 7, mouth ejaculation. That's of what we would call a larvae in the Bardonian tradition. It's not as bad as it sounds. And Neil puke. I wasn't sick actually, so Neil puked. And the story about me being sick, that's something that only comes in a later period, because this took a long time to happen with me. Number 8, mouthpiece, which is a title. 9, Neil in the kitchen / block. I don't know what the block is.
I know what the block is.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, we'll explain that later. Yeah.
Okay, yep. 10, oracular miracula. That's when basically I was Edward Kelly and you were John D, and ayahuasca was like the angels. It was like that.
It was like that.
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah.
Then we have / waves and coils. This is as it retracts and comes back in these serpentine waves and coils. Yeah. Then we have 11, back through the humor gate. 12, sleep-ish, while I get grilled and I get grilled. I was going to say interrogation. It was a bit like that. I get grilled about certain personal issues, and integration takes place. So this is the experience going on, even after we've decided, right, it's time to crash now. So we're both kipping on the floor in this room, and the visions continue. Demons out with air breath. All right, that's the larva. Larvae is plural, I believe. The singular larva, but it was larvae because there were 2 of them. Right, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that helps because that's the structure. So
that's good.
Yeah, I think that helps, doesn't it?
And it's already evoked lots of memories that had remained a bit dormant. So that's good. Yeah,
I think there's a lot in that. Just reading that list, it's like whoa, So I've got here visions octopi, big mother snake, eye with feather. Do you know what? I think if we go through all of those stages in order first, see what we remember, does that seem like, you know, for thinking about the viewer, the listener, this might be easier to deal with, and then we'll go back and read the detailed notes and see what that evokes. So number one, humour gate. That is like we're both just sitting there, we've taken the brew, and it's like, right, sort of 20 minutes later, do you feel any different?
It was really latent, wasn't it? I mean, you know, you don't want to compare it to other drugs, but you go through this period of not feeling like anything's happening, so you get bored waiting, so you feel like you're doing things to amuse yourself or keep yourselves busy talking, and then it's at some point during that stage that you realise you are actually going through a change. And I think this may be slightly unique to the way in which we did the ceremony, because, and I've no experience of traditional ayahuasca ceremonies, but traditionally I think you'd have more people in a room, and a friend of mine that recently did a week of ceremonies said that they were all in a room and music was being played, and the music was very key in keeping the raising of consciousness. So, but because of that, there was an explicit rule of no talking unless there was some sort of emergency. So everyone has a very closed personal experience that they're not, nothing else is penetrating into, and it's very linked to what's going on in terms of the atmosphere, whereas we're having an open dialogue all the way through this. So some would say that may convolute each other's personal experience and make it less subjective, but at the same time it gave us a unique experience that, you know, we've been able to have a kind of different slant on this than a lot of people have. Now, I'm not saying that in traditional ceremonies no one talks or no one interacts, but the way in which we interacted through this was quite unique. Anyway, going off at a tangent, but the humour gate, it was definitely the sort of first stage I felt of, it's casting off any kind of inhibition. So it's part of the opening up process is when you start laughing. As we know in meditation, you can hit spots where you're just laughing, and it is just the acceptance of reality, or it is different things for different people, but you know, you feel like the laughter is a final letting go, and that's kind of what a lot of the process is about in this ceremony. It's about letting go, opening up, you know. So that's my take on the humour gate. That's as daft and childish as it was, that you've got to go through that, because you're also expelling kind of unnecessary and bad energy. So like I said, purification before the ceremony, great, but you're only going to end up doing it in the ceremony. So this is why the humour gate went on for about 3 hours, is because we just had to get to that stage during the ceremony. So yeah, but yeah, that's great.
So well put, well put, Samuel. Humour gate number 2 is patterns. So what started to happen, I'm sure it was both of us at the same time, wasn't it? It was like you start to see, in the same way with any drug really, you close your eyes, and the room's dark anyway, so we could probably see them without our eyes closed, and the patterns are, there's something weird about these patterns, because it's not just any old pattern. They're starting to look like animals that you would find in the rainforest. So like the wings of certain insects joined up with pieces of spiders and bits of fungi, and then snake scales came a little bit later on, the snake scales, and I think that was very portentous really, because once the snake scales arrive, it's like, look out, you know, we are cooking on full gas. So these patterns, these swirlings, it's as if you see in your stomach the ayahuasca is being digested or whatever, and I believe that it's getting in contact with the mind in your stomach, because there's this like modern theory, if you like, that we don't just have one sort of brain system that's only up here in the head, that through the system of the spine, I've suggested perhaps we have a kind of mind in the heart and there's a mind in the stomach, because sometimes your stomach knows things before you do. Sometimes your heart, that's your your conscience talking to you. So it seems to be directly connected. To begin with, it kind of takes over the mind in your stomach. And this is a bit gross, because it's all about, puking and shitting and being like a baby. And honestly, like, the whole human experience is I mean, you've heard Graham Hancock and talk about all this kind of stuff before on the internet, which is where we learnt about this anyway, reading Graham Hancock's brilliant book, Supernatural. If you haven't read it, you should. Brilliant book. So this is how we're kind of primed for the experience, but we're open. So the patterns begin, but we're not expecting anything. And then all of a sudden, obviously we found this really funny, but maybe it's not quite so funny in the telling, I don't know. But all of a sudden, I just felt Terence McKenna coming through me. So we're sitting back there and like, can you feel anything? And I'm like, all of a sudden, looking at these patterns, it's all bullshit. Like, obviously in Terence's voice. So we just crack up immediately.
We have audio recordings of all of this as well, don't we? Not that we intend to play them, but we do have that to listen back to. Unfortunately, it's not as funny as it was at the time. But
the way that coming, it's like, Terence is, it's like Terence is saying, just the way that Terence had that, that habit of just sort of cutting the crap, let's see what you got, impress me. It's all bullshit, So
but he did figure importantly in the experience, because
this is not the only time that there's a what would you call it, a Tezanonian or a McKennonian situation comes up. So what happens next is she comes, and this is like I could never talk about this in any crass way. I'm still that affected by it, because this is what we're going to talk about as well. Like, how does this change you? How does this change your view on life? How does this affect you? It's still with me, because when she arrived, I've got here love, eye with feather. I'm just going to read just a tiny bit of that, just to check that there's nothing. Right.
And this happened at the same time, didn't it, for both of us? Like, so it wasn't like I was behind you or you were ahead of me. Like,
it wasn't like we were influencing each other's psychology by saying, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
It'd be like, this is what I'm going through, and then on the other side it would be like, I'm going through this too. Maybe not exactly the same, but there were things that were exactly the time. Like, remember the blue eye?
Yeah.
We're having a vision of a massive blue eye at the same time. It's like, what have you go quiet for a while, and then you sort of come out and you're like, what's happening for you? It's like, there's a blue eye. It's like, oh, I've been having the blue eye. So this whole, this idea, Terence McKenna again, the telepathine, bang on true. Like, sorry, I don't care how skeptical you are. Telepathine, ayahuasca is a substance that will open you up and elevate you spiritually, where you will share thoughts, not only between you and the other person, or people in the group. We can only imagine, we've only ever done it, together as friends. So you will be able to read each other's minds and have the same experiences. And if that isn't amazing enough, which brings me back to she comes, as she arrives. I'll let you recount yours in a moment, but I'll say the first thing I was aware of was like a domed ceiling, and I know a domed ceiling is a trope in psychedelic experiences. There was a domed ceiling, and I could perhaps describe it as made out of a kind of stained glass of all the different colours of the rainbow, that was also a little bit like the Amazon rainforest, that was alive, that had emotional impact. And at the top of this dome, something opened, an eye. And when this eye opened, it's like just one of the most beautiful things I've ever. I could never do it justice in art or words. It was like the eye of, you know, when you meet just a lovely little girl. You know, little girls, they're beautiful. They sit there with their little colouring pens, and I made this for you. It was like that kind of heart expressed as this eye opened, the eye of a beautiful young female. And behind the loving intentions of a beautiful young girl was the wisdom of an eternal goddess, like all in one moment. And I can describe this eye as being something like a feather, slightly feathered, something like a bird, but not a bird, something like leaves, and multicolored and iridescent and exquisitely beautiful. And I could just go on and on, but like I could never do it justice. It's like the first time you meet the goddess. It's a little bit like someone, you know, recounting the first time they, you know, fell in love. You know, the first time I saw her eyes. It's a bit like that. It's like knock you out. And so that was my, along with snake scales appearing in the patterns, the arrival of the snake goddess. So along with all this other stuff that I've mentioned, there was a serpentine quality mixed within the experience.
Yeah, and what I experienced was different, but also had a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities. So that concept of being in a room, or a bit like being in a theatre, something like that. I was obviously having very intense visions as well, and again, I can't do it justice to the intensity, the harmony of the colours, the variation of the detail and the depth. It just seemed to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, but it was coming towards me, and I felt like things were revealing themselves in a three-dimensional pattern. And coming back to Terence McKenna, because we have this thing early on in the notes that says octopi, and
Octopi.
It was part of the humour gate, but also Terence McKenna says something about octopi, didn't he? He said that they have a way of depicting with colour patterns
Language
an emotion,
through colours.
Exactly. And he said that when someone says, "I see what you mean," or "I see how you feel," that's the best way we can sum this up. So it wasn't just patterns, it was a transmission of emotional language through patterns, but with an intensity and a complexity that you just can't imagine in a normal waking state. You just can't imagine it, so there's no point trying to describe it. And for me, the patterns conveyed the quintessential feminine in such a pure and intense way that I was crying, crying, absolutely blown away, speechless actually, couldn't actually put
you
into words.
Quiet for
yeah, that's how you know someone's really having an experience, is that you're not getting anything out of them. And what I have to mention also is this happens behind closed eyes, and when you start embracing the visionary state that you're in, you will naturally just keep your eyes closed. But if one was to open their eyes, one could get up and go to the toilet, and go down to the kitchen and make a cup of tea if they wanted to, come back, close their eyes, give it a couple of minutes and resume the visions. And I think if you look at experience with DMT and things like that, that contrast between open eyes and closed eyes is even more stark. But yeah, so for me it was that swelling fractal revelation of the feminine, the love behind it, but also the might
Are
and
you
the
channeling
power.
Terence now?
I'm not. No. No.
It's lovely, beautifully put.
Well, maybe it does. Just the memory of it is enough to bring out eloquence, in your speech. So
No, definitely. No.
yeah.
And I had something there. What was it? It just brought me back when you said about going quiet. I remember before she arrived, I remember one moment, I'm sure it was in the first session, that I remember saying to you, am I the right way up? Because I was convinced that I'd just gone like this, and I was experiencing the world with my legs up that way and my head down here. And I remember there were a few, just going back just for a second here, there was a slight hint of the alien, like an alien planet and technology.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that will come in key later, another one of these tropes that just is part of the experience. Aliens and weird futuristic technology that is more plant than pollution, if you like. It's more wizardry than the industrial revolution and all of its damage.
There was some of that in the build-up, wasn't there? I mean, for me, in the visions building up to the arrival of her, there was definitely that alien-esque things like spiders, a reptilian feel to the fractals. It was almost, and I'll just say this off the cuff, not that I might not be serious about it, but it was almost if preceding her arrival there were subordinate beings that were kind of a bit like if you walk to the jungle and you're walking into towards a particular spiritual shrine, or walking to
I haven't heard you say this before. This is interesting.
Well, if you think, I don't know, that sort of the king animal in the jungle, there'll be.
It's like you're approaching the throne room, but there are guards and a retinue.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. So, I felt like there were, not in a kind of guardian sort of way, but other beings were manifesting and clearing the way, and you were sort of heading deeper to the queen, if you like, or the master. So maybe some of these things that you pass on the way aren't particularly nice. You'll see, you'll have some things that are slightly kind of grim.
It's important to stress as well that we might seem like all we're missing now is long hair, because it sounds very hippie-ish with all the talk of love and beautiful beings and everything, but there is a dark side. So stay tuned here, and this dark side is gonna open its petals fully, but the experience taken as a whole is still positive in its essence. But there were, actually no, we'll get to that later. Right, what's the next? The camera.
Oh yes.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a go. So we really wanted to film the whole experience, and there'll be some skeptical people out there who will say, well, why didn't you then? The fact is, we just couldn't have the experience with the camera on, because it acts like another form of consciousness in the room, and also we were told to turn it off, weren't we, basically? So there's two reasons there. It was acting as a massive distraction. We felt like
we were playing for the camera ever so
we weren't
slightly.
genuine.
We weren't genuine enough.
And it became like a burning interference in the whole
it's like
harmony
another
of it.
Personality in the room that shouldn't be there. Yeah.
So it was ruining the whole thing, and then I remember, I don't know if she said it to you and you said to me, or if she said it to, no, she would have said it to you and you said it to me. So she says turn the camera off.
Yeah, I said to you, she says turn the camera off. It's wrong. It's a distraction. It's wrong. It's not how the ritual should go.
Yeah.
So he got up. Tell me if you remember it. Like this is how I remember it. You got up to turn, as it's your camera. You got up to turn it off, and you're like, it's off.
It was already off.
It was already off, and
Yep.
we were like, when does that ever happen? It was recording.
Yeah.
Because we've got the recording up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We've got the recording up until that point, but at a certain point, it stops.
Yeah, and
So,
it was already off. It was
yeah.
like I'd already turned it off.
So
but
this
it was
is an actual, you know, paranormal, like real world thing that happened where it's like she's saying, I want that camera off. He gets up to turn it off, and it switched itself off. So it must have been only been on for like 20 minutes, half an hour.
It was on for a while, but it hadn't. The battery hadn't died. It wasn't anything like that. It was just off, you know.
Yeah.
So
Did you actually check to see if the battery had died?
the battery hadn't died because I was able to turn it on later and.
Yeah,
you
because
know,
I just want to be.
charge it,
We
but
know,
yeah.
but I just want to be sure for people listening.
And it had been on. It
Yeah.
had been on for a couple of hours. So you know, some might say, "Oh, did it just turn itself off because it had timed out?" Or
But what a moment to pick.
had it burnt out? But yeah, and if you
Yeah.
watch the video back, it's almost up until that point, sort of shortly before that. You can look in the sequence of events and you can see that it just turned itself off just before, you know. So.
Yeah. So basically, to us in the experience, and I you know, I still believe this. She turned the camera off, and so after camera off, the next one, number 6, I have what happened in the order of events is personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember exactly? Because I remember so much personal stuff.
There's a lot of personal stuff.
It's just
And,
overwhelming. Yeah.
But I'm happy to allude to some of it. So this is the experience, and this is what people that do these ceremonies, people that have been to ayahuasca retreats, this is what they're after. It's what am I supposed to do in my life? How do I improve myself? You know, but you do have to wade through all your shortcomings and all your guilt and all your tears and regret. And so this is the sort of process that, you know, 99% of people want to avoid for their entire lives, but truth seekers will go through it. And you get, in my opinion, this is the stage where it all becomes very sad, and it also becomes very liberating. And this is the stage where I felt I was given quite specific advice about what I needed to focus on in my life, and I wasn't given much more information than that. And obviously we can talk about subsequent ceremonies and what happened in the years after, but I'll say now that if, in my opinion, if you don't follow up or don't take the advice that you're given during the personal stages, then you don't get any more advice in subsequent ceremonies. They kind of don't work, because it's a bit like saying to someone, well, do that first, sort that out, and then I'll let you know what you need to do next. But if you don't do that first thing, then it doesn't happen. So the hard bit is following up on the advice in daily life, going forward.
Yeah.
And also, there was another point in all that. You don't get to ask questions. You may have a bunch of questions that you wanted to ask, but when you get into that situation, the questions that you've got on your mind, you'll end up asking different ones, because you'll get pointed in a particular direction as you bring all this emotion out of yourself and all this subconscious kind of weight. You'll find that you need to ask different questions, and you won't get the answers you want, because they'll normally be the ones you don't want to hear, you know. And again, I do refer to a friend of mine who is not interested in the supernatural, but has done this ceremony in Colombia, I think. He said the same thing. He said, I was given a couple of bits of advice, and I'm like, oh, you know, not those. And that's what you get. You're gonna get the hard stuff to deal with, you know. So don't go into a ceremony looking for business advice or what I'm going to do in a career, you know. If you're not treating your wife well enough, or you've got some baggage with some friends that you upset and never healed, some wounds, that's the sort of stuff you're going to deal with. And anyone that walks the Hermetic path will tell you the same thing. It's like you're not going to be able to let things slip between the cracks.
Yeah. There's nothing you can sweep under the bed.
Be careful what you wish for when you do an ayahuasca ceremony, because you're looking to deal with stuff, then you're going to have to deal with stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it kind of becomes a waste of time if doing it again.
And there were certain issues I was having up until this point in terms of, well, just been through, you know, a divorce. So there's a lot of heartbreak involving different people, and all of this was explored in excruciating pain, and certain girlfriends that I'd had recently, and different stuff going on, the way that I treated people. I wouldn't want to talk about it obviously directly, it wouldn't be appropriate, but it was tears streaming down your face, but you're being held by this, just the way that Graham Hancock talks about, almost as if the coils are wrapped around you and you're in this loving embrace, but it's just so emotionally, it's like, it's just excruciatingly emotional, and even just the memory of it now, just and I do think about, I mean, you talk about the effects that linger, these points still come back to me from time to time. They do change the way that I see certain things, the way that I behave. And something else, I tend to view people now, even though a lot of them are a pain in the arse, don't get me wrong, I do tend to see them as someone's child. You know, no matter who they are, like, this is someone's child, you know. And it can be a petulant child, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, it brings you into contact with the vulnerability of being in the presence of the mother, because hence the title, Mother Ayahuasca. You take it through the mouth. It's like a feeding process. It's a nurturing process. She is the mother of the tribe, and she will explore with you issues that only a mother could get that close. And I do have certain issues related to this whole subject. I won't say it was particularly excruciating, but there are thoughts I don't think anymore. I'm not kidding you. There are thoughts I don't explore anymore. Since that first session, it healed something in me. Not the whole complex situation, but the key issue has never repeated itself. So yeah, it works in a practical way. Healing works. And I remember as the healing was taking place, again because of the plants and the whole imagery of the thing, I remember that she showed me an image of the stem of a plant whereby certain branches had become rotten or were of no longer any use. So these branches were cut off. So what happens when you cut a branch off of a stalk, a stem, whatever you call it, trunk, whatever, you get like a little nodule, don't you? Like the place where it's cut, the pain, the sore, the injury. So after the branches were cut from the symbolic tree of the self, that opens up all kinds of ideas, right? She began to rub over these sore wounds, these points, these nodules, if you like, almost like she was sandpapering them until they had become they weren't invisible, but they had become smooth. In other words, you have the scar, but it's not an ugly thing, if you like. It's been it cannot be removed from your memory, it cannot be removed from your personality, but it's been integrated and harmonized into the whole. I mean, what a beautiful analogy. Removing, say if we just pulled one of these off, we got a bit of sandpaper and we just smoothed that and rubbed that and took care of that until it was almost imperceptible, and there you go. The offending branch within your life has been removed. Job done. Healing. Great. Anything else to say on all of that really difficult personal stuff? Apart from the fact that we were both in tears and crying like babies.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, you know, great.
We were.
Hey, you know, you
We
don't have to
were.
watch a movie. This is.
It's all true. It's all true. It's all true. You know what people say. The whole shebang. We found out it was all true, and it was. I would say there's certain. Obviously, it's like, say for instance, like we're both practicing Hermeticists, so our Hermetic journey. Over the time period that we have been earnestly practicing and being guided expertly, and obviously we're very grateful for that. This process, that's like a longer version of what we went through on ayahuasca just in one session. So obviously the longer version is better. The longer version is superior. So definitely Hermetics is superior to just taking ayahuasca one night. But ayahuasca has its own impact in the fact that it's literally like you were walking down the road and you just got zapped up into a UFO. Like, you're not going to forget that, are you? It's so impactful. And another thing that it does, if you didn't know already, I know it sounds terribly arrogant to say, but I'm already in possession of the knowledge that there are spiritual beings that are autonomous, that are different persons, if you like. If you didn't know that already, you're going to get a big shock when you find that out. But this brings us to the notion of, I've likened it before, I've sort of told this joke, even though I'm sure that no one found it very funny. Something that my boss used to say to me, like, you can take a potato, stick it, put it on a boat, send it around the world, it will come back a potato. You're not a potato. That's what he said to me, because he used to say to me, when you go into Egypt, Broderick, because I had plans to go to Egypt, that's what he used to say to me. And I did go to Egypt. This is back in the year 2000. And when I came back, he's like, what did you learn? He goes, of course you learned something, Broderick. You're not a potato, are you? So obviously this really stuck in my mind, the notion of the potato. So this has been my way of explaining, even though it's perhaps a little bit harsh, but so what? I mean, you know, grow some balls, get over it. You know, it's only words, right? Although words are powerful, it depends. It's all about context, yeah? It's not going to work on everyone. Just like I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and what would be an analogy of something that I'm definitely not and will never be?
An analogy, but not.
Yeah,
No.
this might be better coming from someone else. That'll be interesting though, the answer is.
I don't know.
If you can think of a million things, I can't. No. Okay. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and all of a sudden, you know, I'm putting on a shirt and tie and I'm like, I'm really into the financial market now. I'm into stocks and trades and.
Do you know, that's weird, because that's what actually went through my head.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's the opposite of me. Like that, to me, that's like, I'm going to sleep now. I'm not interested. So this is what I'm saying. Like we're just keyed for different. Some people are just born spiritual. Some people are more practical. Obviously, there's a balancing process that goes on when you partake in a spiritual journey, whereby you need to become better at the things that you tend to avoid. Look at the things that you've swept under the bed. You know, so this is going on. Don't get me wrong, this is going on, but the core still remains somewhat the core, and always will.
All right.
I don't.
Sorry, no, it's fine.
Okay. So there's no polite way to put it, really. Not everyone's going to have this experience because they're not ready, and perhaps they don't have the capacity, but enough people have, and those people who are not interested, or you know, they take ayahuasca and all of a sudden they're tripping all kinds of paranoid delusions and God knows what else. Not my problem, you know, but obviously, you would wish everyone well, and but you understand that there is a cold, hard, hierarchical reality to the evolution of different beings going through their processes. We're not the same. So if you're somewhat ready and you're not a potato, it seems that us non-potatoes are having a similar experience. It's all about change, evolution, meeting entities, there being a mother goddess at the heart of it, etc., etc. What was the original point? I don't know. I can't remember either. I can't remember. Anyway. Where did we get to? Mouth ejaculation.
Yeah, this is all you, this one.
Sorry, I'm going to have to keep talking here. Sorry about that. I recognised immediately from the works of Franz, Bardon, the tally between what I was experiencing and what I'd read, which was all of a sudden like an exhalation of breath as something slimy like a slug was removed by Mother Ayahuasca from my spiritual body, and it was an ugly living thing that was certainly not anthropomorphic within body or mind. It was an animal thing, and it was feeding on some part of me. It was a parasite. 2 of these were removed. I remember distinctly. One was removed and dealt with, and then another one, and it was not pleasant, to be honest, but I was too fascinated to be squeamish. It was fascinating, and I can still see now in my mind's eye the almost like when you breathe out on a cold day, you can see your breath like that was surrounding the being that was being removed.
And as an observer, so in the ceremony, Broderick's like, I put 5 or 6 yards to my left, aren't you? So you're kind of like there, and I'm looking to the side when this was happening to you.
It's good that we're sitting in the same size that we were, so you can imagine it, can't we?
Yeah, so I'm looking to the side, and I remember seeing, obviously I didn't see what he was seeing, but he did everything but the physical thing that was coming out of you. I could see, so I could see the movements that you were making, and it was very genuine. So this isn't just an experience that you're living in your head or a vision. It was very physical and very real, and I could actually observe it. So that's another sort of good thing about the way we did things.
And I do remember a medical examination taking place as well, where I felt my entire body being scanned, and certain areas she would stop at and she said, "No, we're okay," or just I don't know, perhaps I'm only guessing this part, perhaps she dealt with that, or changed something, or
we're also,
there was a scan. It was literally a medical scan. Unreal.
What's happening now is we're crossing into this next stage where, because you see point 7 is mouth ejaculation and Neil puke. So at this point we kind of went slightly different ways. So for me, the direct experience was over, and I suddenly felt the need to vomit and couldn't keep it in anymore, so I had to vomit. Now what that does is, obviously, not only does that remove some of the active ingredients, it also is a physical representation that you are kind of done to an extent. Now we made backup brews, but once you've purged, it's really, really difficult to drink more. It's almost impossible, and you're then so sensitive to further vomiting that the moment a drop touches your stomach, you'll be violently sick again. So drinking a whole glass of this stuff is just not going to happen unless you're some sort of weirdo that actually finds it interesting and enjoyable. So no, obviously, present company accepted. But coming back to the original point, so I could no longer have a direct experience or any wisdom directly imparted to me, because I'd effectively said no. And this is this next point down, number 9, which says Neil block, which means I'd kind of also mentally decided that I didn't want any more. So part of me was also rejecting some of this wisdom.
Yeah, because you went kind of quiet and you were in your own world for a while.
Yeah,
from this point, and I remember you wandered downstairs as well, and you sort of stayed there for a little bit. And
yeah, I was sort of.
I remember there was a notion of bubbles as well, like we were both being worked. Like first of all, we were sort of together, and then she was working on us within separate bubbles.
Yeah.
After that, so she was still with both of us, but Neil had sort of left the party, if you like, and I was. I was still at the original party, but Neil had sort of walked off outside, metaphorically, if you imagine.
There was a notion that she could only give really her full attention to one person. I just
realised the mistake I made there, but it doesn't matter.
Or that, I think I became aware of the notion that she could only really give her full attention on one person, or that she wanted to give her full attention to Broderick. So as much as I decided I'd had enough, it also coincided with the idea that I wasn't going any further anyway. So I had a part of the personal stuff was that I had an inner resistance to some of this wisdom, and that did manifest, and the vomiting was a physical, like I said, a physical representation of the fact that I wasn't having any more. So what made this experience between the two of us unique is that I could carry on getting information by proxy because someone else was having the experience, and that's something we'll come on to. So although I was directly done, I was still involved as a kind of not an interpreter. I was still able to ask questions.
And that ties into a stage to come soon, that you were able to ask questions.
Yeah.
So we got here, Neil puke. So you went to puke, and then she said to me, right, you're not going to be sick, Broderick. And part of the reason for that is that I need to be more fully integrated within you, and I'm going to make it somewhat, or actually no, she did say I will make it permanent. There is now a place in your mind that I can access when I need to, and it is true that after this event, and still to this day from time to time, I will get a visit from Mother Ayahuasca in my dreams, in a very vivid way, where it's a dream that's more than a normal dream, and certain of us will understand these kinds of dreams. Sometimes they're accompanied by a kind of buzzing feeling, a sense of presence, all that kind of stuff. So it does appear that happened, that something had been changed whereby there was an entry point that she could but I do believe that within the stomach as well, like once you've taken ayahuasca, and it's like you're always connected to her. And this could sound like something out some morbid science fiction horror story or something, but I mean, personally, I'm happy about it. I'm quite happy that this healing, loving, and awesome entity has decided to make that connection. I'm happy with that. So, can you imagine how certain evangelical Christians would view that?
Yeah.
I don't. We've had enough of them lately. God. Anyway, right. So, there's something I wanted to say about that. Yeah. So, it was almost like an image of a maze within the mind that had been slightly changed and reconfigured, whereby there was an entry point, but also within the bodily system, within the stomach, there was a kind of reconfiguration and a change going on within me, where she said words to the effect of, I need to be more fully within you. I need to integrate within you. And there was a slight emergency attached to this. So I'm not trying to make out like it's so dramatically special, if you like. Well, it's slightly embarrassing for me to recount this, but it's only the truth. and we will deal with the truth of the experience in the hypothetical story that we are recounting, if it had happened.
Oh, yeah.
That there was somewhat of an emergency, that I needed work, that I needed some changes to take place within me, but I was also some kind of receptacle that was valuable to her in a way where she wanted to more deeply integrate within me. So I say the taste, to find really, 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 really strong coffee, I'm cool with this, and I was also cool with the integration process to be permanent, and still am and always will be to my dying day. I'm happy with that, and so the results of this process taking place, and it's funny, I want to say as well, we might get to this later, but like, she can control whether you're sick or not. Like, I think it was in a later session, I remember getting to the loo thinking, I'm just about to, and then she'd be like, no, you're not going to, just turn it off. Like, she's in control of certain aspects of your physicality in that way. And it is important to stress as well, though, this experience, it does come in waves, as Terence McKenna and Graham Hancock have reported. It is like the coils of a serpent that go out and then come back in. So you have almost like a kind of, like a wave of like intense ayahuasca, just visions and communication, and then all of a sudden it just, am I normal now? No, it's building again, and this will go on for a long time, and this is an undulating serpent. So it's beautiful how the analogy of a serpent is so apt. And I think we should say as well that this room that we took it in became the Amazon for me. I'm sure yeah,
and the vibe never left it either.
Yeah,
it always has a kind of,
it's Amazonian at its, like, I don't think you could take this, or maybe some people have, but like, our experience was we were open to whatever happens, but it was Amazonian. It is green, she's a snake goddess, it's all about plants and all the animals of the rainforest and the deep secrets of the rainforest and the tribes that live which will feature in later things that we say. But anyway, for now, the next piece that we're going to get to, I tell you what, I think this is going to be much longer than we realise, don't you think? So I think we should turn the camera off for now. Just take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll make part 2. So from your point of view, this is part 1 ended, and part 2 will begin with Mouthpiece. Cool. See you there. I know you're going to be there in this hypothetical story of what might have happened to 2 people.